So Cooper here. Cooper is someone I know from Twitter. We started talking about a year ago, actually, maybe a little bit more than a year ago. And you know, he's an interesting fellow. He's a magician, and he's written a book. It is called Beyond the Horizon: Meaning, a Mystery, and Magic. A modern seeker's guide to meaning, mystery, and magic. All right. So. Uh, it's a great book. I wanted to have him on to talk about it. You know, he's got some really original thoughts about magic, but he still stays within, a lot of what you have kind of come to expect since the 19th century, but kind of revamps it interesting way. One day you may hear Cooper's name mentioned alongside, Peter Carroll or Aleister Crowley, someone that started a new spin on magic. All right, so hey Cooper, how are you doing? Want to tell us about your book?
Sure. So it began out of where do we want to talk about? So it began took about 2 years to write, edit, all that good stuff, um, and I hemmed and hawed about trying to make a book that was properly publishable or one that I thought was interesting on magic. And like most magicians, my interesting to me being the essential part. So the book is, I think I term it as a love letter in the introduction to magic, to a life lived as a practitioner of magic in many, many different contexts. And I talk a little bit about that in the book. We go from in the beginning, hey, here's why astrology, particularly like what we would talk about as Babylonian astrology and its descendants. Here's why that's so useful for magic and really helpful. And here's a magical framework you can use based on that. So if you understand what the planets are and what the signs are, you can follow this book and get to a decent place for practicing magic. By the end of the book, there are the 10 sorceries that I lay out, which, in my opinion, if you're a practitioner of magic, you should be able to do all 10 of these things without any trouble. These should be very basic things. So, from like a Kundalini meditation to be aware of your spirit and soul, to then I think the 10th sorcery is actually making a contract with the spirit that has some permanent effect outside of yourself, right? So I
Right.
think one of my big gripes about magic and what you will find in the book is that I am not interested in magic as like self help or personal development. I don't think people who practice magic are good. I don't think practicing magic is necessarily good. I don't
Right.
think that bad people get punished because they're bad, and like good people get rewarded because they're good. I certainly do believe in good and evil and talk about kind of what those words mean to me in the esoteric way I'm using them. But I think the book is ultimately written for like that modern seeker. I think it is my audience on Twitter and in life, and my friends tend to be nerdy academics, people out of place, usually for good reasons, but you know, um, but also deeply disenchanted, very bitter. I think there's a lot of sadness, and millennials as a generation, we really celebrated that. Like, I'm so much more hurt and angry and upset, and I hate everything, and I'm more offended than you, which makes me more valid than you. And I, that's we're working on that as a generation as we're getting older, and I'm working on that as a person. And this book was very much my answer to that. Of like, no, actually, things can be better, and I don't think you should pursue an absolute good, but I think you should pursue better, and magic is a means of doing that.
Yeah, I agree. Magic is a means of improving things, right? It can kind of push things over the edge, right?
Mm.
Um, because the way I look at magic is like the more like effort and energy that you put into it, like the bigger the result, right? And so, on a very basic level, so there's other ways around that, but one of the reasons why you make offerings to some deity or you even do a ritual at all is to expend that energy, right? And to make those thought forms, push them out there into the world, push your will out into the world. And it's just like a lot of the stuff we do with magic is just like it's means to like kind of help reify our mental concepts so we can like so if we're trying to do something, we're trying to get an edge, then you tap the magic into something you're already putting a lot of effort into in your life, and it can be something that takes that to the next level, all right? Because there's
Mm,
more energy to work with. Like you've already got some momentum going, right? And so like the least amount you have to reduce the probabilities is best because magic can like make something that's unlikely more likely, but if it's vastly unlikely to begin with, it depends on how good you are as to how likely you can make it,
yeah,
right?
and even then, there are just some things that cannot be done. Which I know as a magician is a thing I'm not supposed to say, but it is. And I spend a lot of time in the beginning of the book, like in the first section particularly, where I'm talking about um, why I think astrology is so useful for magic. But I would also caveat that with learning astrology doesn't teach you anything about magic, but you should learn astrology if you're going to study magic because it's my
Yeah,
big historical argument is that it's the only consistent across most Eurasian traditions
that's
spanning about like 6,000 years. So you can find touch points between those traditions where they're referencing these things and even other traditions, right? Like, I'm going to slaughter his name. It's Jeffrey Cott. I think, I
Kotick.
don't know how to say it. Maybe.
Kotick.
Um,
Yeah,
it's a
he's an
very
astrologer.
Russian-y looking name or Polish, maybe.
Yeah,
He
I think
seems
it's
very
Jeffrey
nice.
Kotick is who you're talking about. He's an astrologer, a contemporary
Yeah, and
astrologer.
he does.
Jeffrey Kotick.
Um,
He does good work. Yeah, shout out to Jeff Kotick.
and his a lot of his work right now has been about Sinosphere interpretations and engagement with Babylonian zodiacs. So, like, obviously, the Chinese, the Sinosphere, blah blah blah, has its own astrology system, but it also engaged with Western systems, particularly through the Islamic populations that settled there. And so, it's really interesting to see like they're drawing on Islamic astrology, and like so you're watching. You have to I'm going to hugely nerd out, but the benefit of studying multiple traditions of astrology is that you get access to all of these other magical traditions that are, even if critiquing it and saying this is stupid and wrong, and here's why, because you have some fundamental grasp of the discourse that they're engaged in, you can much more quickly go through their works and get what you need to actually use magic. I'm certainly I would say like postmodern magician. I think chaos magic's great. I do a lot of big ritual work, but I don't think it's the end all be all. I certainly think you should play across traditions. I like the concept of syncretic magics. I think that might just come from like my Catholic ecumenical upbringing of like there is some deeper truth that we will all discover if we continue on the great work. So
Right.
continue on the great work. Like
Yeah,
I think that's the other big thesis in the book, and a thing that I've gotten some feedback that people really like is I don't pretend that I think I'm absolutely correct. I don't doubt myself. I don't have a lot of like, in my role as like a researcher, I do need a healthy skepticism. I do need to challenge my hypothesis. Yeah, I don't bother with magic. But I also don't care about proving that I'm right to anyone. And I think that kind of freedom is really important. And when we talk about like the last, I don't know, century of magical development, the breaking away from the only meaningful authority in magic is tradition, be it a religious tradition or an order or however you're coming across it, like maybe through a family, right? If we're talking about like ancestral
mhm.
traditions, but we've really moved away from like, no, you as an individual can cultivate this. The left hand path kind of takes it,
Yeah, if
Temple
Joseph
of Set.
Smith can do it, why can't you?
Yeah, as a descendant of fun little Mormons, goddamn right. Um, which is a fun sidebar that I also talk about in the book. Is like I am not the mystic in my family. I'm not the first person to think that they're a prophet in my family. I'm not the first person to be like problematically religious when it's like annoying to everyone else in my family. This is what
Yeah,
we do.
yeah.
So it's nice to know. At least it's in the blood. What are you gonna do?
Someone says in chat, where can you find the book?
You can find it on Amazon. I believe there's an ebook version and the paper copy. I like my books in paper copy, so I would recommend it. But feel free to get it in ebook if that's your preference. But I believe, yeah, Amazon's the only place you're going to get it right now. I would love to do a second printing, but mostly it would just be a more organized version of this. Um, I was going to do an index, and just to be honest with you, um, we were 2.5 years into this project, and I just needed to be done to move on with something. So the index got sacrificed. There is a great works cited. I'm very pleased with that. There's about like 50 to 70 books in the back that you should check out. Um, they're organized by section, and I do try to pull from some sources outside my, I guess, like magical upbringing. But yeah, it's going to be overwhelmingly English magic,
Yeah.
old Greek classical magics, and then like OTO onward high magic. I
Yeah.
really don't get into the medieval stuff. I've read a lot of it, but as
It's
soon as
too
I need a compass and a protractor, fuck no,
it's
no,
too
no, 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 no.
complicated, that stuff. That stuff is way it's that they're just adding stuff just for show at that point.
Yes,
Um, yeah.
absolutely.
And I understand that sometimes adding things for show to a ritual can be important, but I think it's more important if you're the one that adds it, right? Rather than
Yes.
just copying someone else's addition, right? Which is an interesting point about, what the role of uniqueness has in magic. Um, I don't know. I mean, what do you think about that, Cooper?
So in the book, toward the middle, section 3, I start to break down my logic around metaphysics and this question of, is it better to do the ritual as it's written, or is it better to do my own thing? And naturally, my answer is going to be they both have merit. I think following the ritual, doing all of that is great, but I do think, particularly for how we think about magic, like culturally, because I that is really, I'm a magic is consciousness kind of person, right? So your beliefs about the world and your fundamental understanding of how things work is the primary limit to all magic you can do. It's why sometimes when I talk about healing magic is really, really difficult, and part of that is because you don't know how to heal yourself. So, and you can't imagine that taking place, and so you have to have some degree of a mental framework for the magic to take place, right? There has to be a logic, is usually what I would talk about it as.
Mhm.
And I think the beauty of showmanship, of putting your own spin on a ritual, is in that you can hide some of the stuff that maybe is a problem. You can, I mean, part of the reason that we would use drugs, right, for like sex magic is that you can be more uninhibited. It just fundamentally allows you to produce more energy. So if
Yeah.
your twist is helpful in that way, awesome. If the twist becomes a performance in and of itself and starts to overtake the actual working, then it becomes a problem, and you're inventing shit that gets in the
Yeah.
way of you doing the
Yeah.
actual work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I usually want to strip it down, but sometimes, like especially earlier in my practice, I think adding particularly like prelude stuff, right? Like, um, I've always been big on the prep into a ritual being almost more important than the ritual itself. I think
Yes.
that's a hot take maybe, but
I agree with you. I agree with you.
because
Going
the
to
ritual is just a show.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
the fun
I
part.
think you said to me once that going to Home Depot and buying all the shit to do it is as much the ritual as actually burning the thing, right? And
Yeah,
doing the fire
absolutely.
sacrifice, right? And speaking of fire sacrifices, I mean, the whole thing is like almost every ritual is more or less a variation on the same thing where it's like, you like build a fire, you call down the spirits, you burn something, make a sacrifice for some symbolic thing, and then you feast afterward, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that basically is like 90% of rituals, right? So
yeah,
I don't know,
it
why
really
can't why,
is.
if they're all variations on each other, why can't you make your own variation?
Which is the entire thesis of my book in the magic system, I would frame it as a framework rather than maybe its own independent system, because it isn't any one thing, but it's a logic of how to approach it, which is very much that, yeah, magic rituals are, all rituals are three things, right? There's a catalyst, there's some kind of an invocation, and there is some sort of power source behind it, right? So if you've got those three things, you've got a magic ritual. I would make the argument that everything else is just an alteration of that basic formula. So I break it into spellcasting and enchantment. Spellcasting is a fast ritual where you're using yourself as the catalyst instead of using something else. And enchantments are the opposite. They're slow rituals where the invocation is delayed and pushed off, right? It's to the point that you can use it protectively, right? Where, like a Hexenspiegel comes to mind, where the actual magic doesn't take place until another circumstance encounters it. So the
Yeah.
magician has laid that foundation, but the ritual actually is not the making of the Hexenspiegel. The ritual is when somebody uses a hex on you and the mirror shatters instead of you being affected. Um, I think people sometimes forget that, like, the act of the magic is often way delayed beyond the ritual, um, especially with enchantments, which I think people should be using more than they do.
Yeah. Yeah. And then enchantments can have, kind of like permanent effect, just like a buff, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Something you were saying though, about what I really like about how you approach it is that the meta level that you look at it, where you're like, what is magic really? What are we talking about when we say this? Um, is there some way to describe it that is not eh, that goes that where we can piece all of this together and look at things across traditions and even make our own magic, right? And
Mm,
so I like it. I feel like I felt an affinity for what you were saying when I came across you because I have come to a similar conclusion on my own through my own journey and stuff. And you and I actually have like similar roots with the Rosicrucian stuff being some of our first exposure to the
mm,
occult. But I wanted to ask your opinion about this. So the way when I was kind of initiated and taught is, my teacher first, before I would invoke any kind of spirits or anything like that, we would make spells and enchantments and stuff just using only your own will, right?
mm.
And doing that over and over and over again, right? And kind of like he said, it's like you're just like doing reps with like the bar like really high, right? Like it's like you're
Yeah.
putting like all the weight on the thing and then doing reps over and over. He's like, that's what it is. And he's like, if you do this for a few years before you start invoking any spirits, then it'll go way easier for you when you finally start having to wrestle with the spirit world. And I felt like that was helpful for me. Like I felt like I mean, I've gotten myself into some scrapes as well, but I feel like it
It
did prepare
happens.
me. What do you think about that advice? Do you think that's good advice?
I do. I think, generally speaking, I would agree with it. That's the approach that I take in the book as well. You're not going to deal with spirits. So there are the 10 sorceries. I think I have you play with elementals first, and then the last sorcery is an invocation of a household spirit, which, like, to me is barely a spirit.
I'm one of
Like
those. They're like
it's
Yancey's.
yeah, it's fantastic, and you should do this. Grand. They're very helpful. They will help you find magical sources on your properties. They're great. But that's just all. That's all they are. Just household spirits, and even that takes 10 sorceries to build up to the point where I'm like, okay, you can conjure a thing that has a vested interest in you also benefiting. That, like, benefits from you having more money and more resources and a better, safer life. Like, yes, because you're going to spend that in the home, and which will benefit the spirit. So they are likely to help you. Um, so my early experiences with magic were mostly led by my parish priest, and so he obviously was like, no, we don't talk to spirits. We pray to God, and we pray to the saints. And then you should not pray to spirits. And if you do hear those kinds of spirits, that is, here's how you combat them. And so, like, I was. going and like, okay, so which saint am I supposed to be praying to? Like, what? How do we do this? So that was a lot of that early magic for me, which is different than if you're doing it with like a structured magician who's properly you're actually using your soul. The fun thing about religious magics is that you kind of, in my worldview anyway, um, you're able to go farther than you should be, but you can't break the rules. You can't bend it. There's not a lot of playing with it. So, like there's this my story my friends like to tell where we're I don't know like 11ish and out on Halloween and we've terrified ourselves and we're being followed by some older kids who are obviously found some marks. I immediately fall to my knees, whip out the rosary and start praying to the saints. Like that was just very much like, yes, this is what, and the way it was explained to me by my priest was there are two different ways of praying to the saints. There's one where we invoke the saints, and then there's another where we evoke the saints.
Mm.
So again, I wish I could meet Father John and just have an honest heart to heart with him of like, how exactly did you end up in my tiny little town parish? Like, you had to really fuck up because he was in the Vatican and was a priest stationed there for quite a long time, and then ends up in butt fuck no. Did Father John? I don't think he diddled anyone, at least not in our parish. I would have heard about it. I would have gotten diddled given how often I was in his office. But that didn't happen. So I don't think he was a diddler. I think he might have actually been like a legit believer in Catholicism, which is a problem
I don't
for
know,
a priest.
Cooper. Maybe you just weren't his type, Cooper.
I so here's the fun thing. I wasn't the only gay Catholic boy begging this man to spend time with him alone and teach me about magic and like show me how to talk to God, and none of us got diddled. So
Well, good
there were
for
like
him.
three of us. I exactly, which is really funny because my grandfather was vehemently convinced that he was in fact a pedophile because
I mean,
he was just
yeah.
very obviously gay.
I mean, he is a priest into the occult, right? It's
It's
not.
not a far reach, to
uh,
be fair. But I
um,
love Father John. He was great, and did have that advice of, and later mentors I had, even like hoodoo mentors were like, yeah, no, there's unless until your own soul is strong enough to manage elementals and minor spirits, why are you bothering? You're just asking for trouble.
yeah, yeah. No, that's true. That's true. Yeah. Although tussling with them can help you level up pretty quick.
Uh, it will inevitably you're going to do it. So it's just a question of how prepped do you need to be before you fuck up. Because I
Yeah.
think to your point there, I wish I'd made this clear in the book, and I think it's in there. But there is no like you can't do this and not have it go poorly. I think Crowley, um, in his later works, is reflects on that. Of the magician's ascent isn't just going up, and I do talk about this in the book. It is also having to come back down. Um, you reach this pinnacle of magic, and you touch something outside of the natural world, and it causes changes in the natural world, and then you have to walk back from that and go back to being what you actually are, which is electrified goo inside a monkey shell. And that up and down over the course of your life is necessary. There is nobody who actually does this work always has good things happen, is always happy, like their life goes well. That is how I know immediately that you're like a fake ass spiritualist when it's not, we don't have any, nothing ever bad happens. Like
Yeah.
you're promising lots of success. No, magic is hard. Magic is scary. There are good reasons why people have prohibitions against it.
Yeah.
I have prohibitions against it. I would not encourage everyone to practice. Um, I
It
also
can be
think magic is
dangerous.
beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's both
Uh,
dangerous and beautiful. Um, yeah, you can wind up in a situation where you don't even know what you've got yourself into. You know, um,
Especially with
yeah,
angels. That's the thing that I've noticed is people need to stop conjuring angels.
yeah, they have their own agenda.
and and you are not ready for it. Um, that I would say of the magic rituals I've done in my life, conjuring an archangel, probably number one or two, definitely number one in terms of like fucked me up.
Right.
Um,
Because can
I
you really
still,
conjure an angel though? That's the question. I mean, like, will the angels be willing to do business with you? I mean, is would it, I don't know. I feel like it could be more like a binding if you don't have their, if you can't get the proper authority or the proper, you're not like of the proper,
yeah,
yeah.
it's that's the problem is it takes um, for that ritual it was probably about 6 months of daily ritual work, um, lots of intense vows that I'm still bound to. And I would go ahead and just like very with a lot of ego put it out there that like as far as natural talents and magic goes, I got plenty. Um, and putting all of that together, it was still 6 months of work, um, in an auspicious location with a coven of magical practitioners also following the rites. Um, and even then, it was hard. It worked. It's great. I'm good job. Yeah, but nuts. And then to have people be like, "Yeah, I tried a ritual to conjure an archangel because I'm mad at my friend." Like, wow, that's crazy. First of all, you're just gonna blow your brain open. If they're just pure intelligence. But yeah, I think it's really interesting. And the whole conjuring dead family members. If you like that, you're not gonna like my book
Mm.
because you're just talking to an elemental. If you were powerful enough to reach into the underworld and bring a human soul back, you wouldn't need to read my book, and I would be reading your book. So, but I think that is where sometimes I talk about like being a wet blanket with magic. Especially, I have a lot of friends who like the paranormal and are like into the kind of Fortean milieu and high strangeness. They like UFOs and cryptids and stuff. Ghost Bros, and then you've got me who's like, you're just scaring yourself. Like, I don't
Right.
know what you
Yeah,
want me to
yeah.
do, but I sometimes I wish I was more fun with magic. I wish I was like, I wish I thought I was special and that like I was. Yeah, I think that would be great. I think of magic as so mundane.
Yeah.
I have a very jaded view of magic, I guess, to the point that
Yeah.
I do forget sometimes how sublime it is.
Yeah, it can be. I mean, I
Can
don't know. You
be.
just gotta find things that you like. Like, I don't know. Like, I was just, I love just making magical objects and having all these magical artifacts lying around. Like, the whole, like, top floor of my house is just devoted to, like, magical artifacts. Right? So
Yeah,
it's
and
like,
it doesn't surprise me at all. Given
yeah.
our given our interactions on the magic side, you being a skilled enchanter is like not at all on the list of shocking things.
So, yeah, well, how about this? For your advice for someone that's like, starting out with magic or wants to do it, what's like, maybe number one thing they should do and then number one thing they shouldn't do? All right?
Yeah, I'm gonna do the cheap commercial answer, and then I'll give you a real answer. The number one thing you should do is buy my book. Obviously, it is meant to be a primer for people who are not new to philosophy and theology, but new to magic. Maybe you've dabbled, you bought like Matt Oren's Psychic Witch or something. Like some Fluff Llewellyn conjuration stuff. Like if you've touched that and we're like, okay, this is okay, but there's nothing like meaty about it, you're gonna like the book because I'm very here's the practical stuff. Um, Actual advice, maybe more generally, would be to practice. Do magic. From the first, if you buy magic book, open book to section where there's magic and do that. Otherwise, I don't understand what you're doing. That has been so growing up. I was very lucky that I happened to meet a lot of like magical communities, and practitioners. So the Twitter space has been kind of my first introduction to like the broader community. And one thing that I'm shocked at is how little people actually practice for how many books they've got. And they're like, yeah, I've read blah blah
I
blah
know.
blah 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, do you know how to like do a spell? And they're like, I don't know. That isn't it. That's not the boneless, right? Like, blah, 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 that's not Abraham. Like, blah, blah, like,
Yeah,
I
I
know.
know. I know. It's
It's
so
okay.
crazy. Yeah, those type of people, they just read books endlessly and don't do it. Like, I don't know. I think I have been doing magic for years before I even looked at a grimoire. You know what I mean? Before I even got curious enough to like actually go and like try out these grimoire spells, there was a lot to keep you there's a lot to keep you occupied. Yeah, I think that is great advice. Yeah, I think that would be my advice too. I would second that advice.
So as
What
for
about
what I
what they
wouldn't
shouldn't
do,
do?
yeah, I really you should not idolize other magicians. Um, I this whole space, right, and not even maybe just magic, but the supernatural woo woo space is so rife with charismatic personalities, and I would even go as far to argue that having a charismatic personality is helpful for magic. Um, but it is very dangerous. It's really easy to fall into the I need to do this and this, and like I need to be like that. It's so easy to say I'm not enough because I'm not blah blah blah. And this is a thing that even some of the like my students, we have had multiple conversations about. If like I am not a good example for you to follow after, and neither is anyone else. Because I wasn't this way at the beginning, and I got here by looking at 15 different people and taking bits and pieces of what I liked from each of them. So absolutely consult different sources. Absolutely follow many people. If you're going to take a magic class, take one from two or three different people. But whatever you do, do not commit to the first tradition you wander down, or the second, or even the third. Spend some time examining these people, and remember, every single one of them has diarrhea. Every single one of them sucks. Every single one of them lies. They're all shitty. We all are garbage because we're all still humans, just like you. We've just maybe found ways to use that more effectively. So I think that's my big do not is really do not believe any one of us is more valid or more deserving or more capable of being a magician than you are. Even if you're going into a thread with me where I'm like, yeah, I don't think your capacity is all that high. Like, I don't think you could be a master magician. You could still be a magician. Every single human being that has a soul can do it, and you will do it on your terms, no matter what you do, no matter what tradition you follow. I mean, that's the whole plot twist that Crowley breaks the high magic orders of is like secretly the daemon, the holy guardian angel, all of the thing that you've been trying to attain. Ha ha ha! It was just you the whole time. Um, and that's
Yeah.
awesome and it takes forever to get there, but that is the ha ha ha, and that is the secret of magic. So however you're going to get there, but no one can tell you how to do that except for you. I can tell you how I got there for myself. Alex can tell you how he got there. Crowley can tell you how he got there. Blavatsky can tell you how she got there, but you will have to walk that path. And if you are looking at other people to show you that path, you will fail and you'll get nowhere. So that's my big caution is remember this is your journey,
Yeah.
and none of us can guide you on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of like, kind of like not to sound gatekeepy, right? But
Hmm.
like, when people ask me, should I do magic? Should I start doing magic? I tell them that if you're asking me that question, then the answer is no. Right? If you should
Yeah.
do magic, you would already be fucking doing it, and you would, or at least you would try it out without giving a shit what someone else says about whether or not you should do it. I mean, come on,
Well, the question would have
who's
been
gonna know better
how.
than you?
You would have asked how to do it, right? Because I do get those DMs. There's the difference of like I think blah, 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 versus like, hey, I want to do this. How do I do it? If I get a how do I do this,
Yeah.
you okay?
Then
Okay,
I
I'll
would
throw you a bone.
I'll tell them, I'll just send them a ritual. Then I'll be like, oh,
Mhm.
here, try this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll crack the grimoires open.
yeah. Here's like a little ward, right? Um, guys, I posted the link if anyone wants to join for chart reads. I posted it on my Twitter account. Anyone, just go there. It's at Baleful Rays. You can find it. I will also post it here in the YouTube chat. Um, you can join and get your chart read. But we'll keep chatting here while we wait for people to join. One thing I wanted to talk to you about, maybe we can do like magic story time, right? Because I've had a recent situation, right? So I recently moved, and I found that there's like ant infestation in the place that I moved, right? And so, I did this banishing ritual and a ward for pests, right? And but I did one that was like really powerful, but didn't last that long. You got to renew it every month. And I was like, all
Mm.
right, I really want these gone, so I'll just make sure to do it again next month. I got other rituals to do next month. Anyway, I'm
Hmm.
gonna definitely renew this ward next month, right? And then the day comes when I'm supposed to do it, and of course, I am out socializing and drinking instead of at home in my attic doing magic, and now uh, I have mice. Right, so the infestation upgraded from ants to mice. As a result, it was gone. Everything there was no pests in the house at all for a month, and then as soon as it expired and I didn't renew it, and the ward something worse came in. Right, so it's like be careful what you start, right? Because if you don't finish it, then and this you'd think I would learn from this after
No,
all the years I've been doing this. After 15 years, you'd think I would not do something stupid like that, but I do it all the time.
I'm firmly convinced that Mercury only gives magic to people who will fuck up occasionally because he needs the walls. Like, there's no other reason that we are all so painfully inconsistent. Because all of us know that, like, every single magician listening to you start that story knew where we were going. 100% guilty. Have done the same thing, and it's part of why I had to leave my last place. Uh, but mine was a protection ward. I thought I was being cute. I really it came from a good place. I I was like, I'm going to. There have been some recent like public violence, particularly against homeless people, and I was like, okay, we're just gonna put a little ward. We're just gonna make things chill. Bad idea, Cooper. Why did every single homeless person in Minneapolis move to that fucking neighborhood? And they were all happy and chill, and wouldn't you know it, the cops didn't bother them, which is okay, great, but they were not being bothered at all. So it is a huge problem in that neighborhood right now, and they're still trying to resolve it. And it got lots of crime, lots of break-ins. Unfortunately, other people targeting those populations followed them to their peaceful place. And instead of what I had intended, which was like giving people a calm place, like at least let's let the park be nice when we're out here. I just turned it to a place that you could go prey upon, chilled out with people. Oops. I
You
haven't.
are you are
Probably thinks he
really
started World
doing
War II.
community service for any local serial killers. Should thank you for corralling all of their perfect targets into one spot, Cooper. Um,
And
all right,
disarming them no less.
we do have a caller. Let's
Oh,
activate him.
awesome.